All right, so the last topic for the day will be e-commerce. What exactly is an e-commerce website? What do you understand by e-commerce? Perfect. Shopping websites. Websites where you have certain products to be sold and you would like to be able to track revenue from your business. The feature e-commerce that analytics provides is useful because you are able to track transaction details. So within one transaction, how many products are being sold, how many people are buying how many products, and how many transactions are getting recorded on a day-to-day basis. And most importantly, what is the revenue associated with these transactions is something that you're able to track. Correct? Okay, so let's just look at e-commerce is pretty simple implementation-wise, when you have it on your site, and most importantly, it gives you a lot of data. Yeah, and also the reports that you have within e-commerce gives you very beneficial numbers or metrics, I would say. Okay, so even before I set up the code for e-commerce transactions to be recorded in my analytics account, I need to tell my analytics system that, hey, my website is an e-commerce website. It needs to recognize that it's an e-commerce website even before I implement it. So I go into my profile settings and I enable the option e-commerce. If I don't do this, and even though I set up the code that is required to implement e-commerce, no data will be tracked because I haven't really told the system that my website is an e-commerce website. Okay? So this needs to be enabled within the profile settings for whichever website that I'm going to set up e-commerce. Okay, so that's how the page looks like. The code looks like. The e-commerce code implementation looks like. Does the first first four lines look familiar? Or I would say not four, maybe three. The first three lines look familiar, right? What are they? First three lines? Yes, they are a part of the basic GA tracking code. Okay? The functions that you're looking at, the next function that you look at, which is in the fourth line, it says add trans. Okay? Underscore add trans. And then you look at another function that says underscore add item. And then you see another function that says underscore track trans. Okay, now these three are the extra functions that go into an e-commerce tracking code. Okay, basically telling the system, add your transaction details, add your product details, and then the function that is saying track trans to basically track the transaction. Okay. Specifications within the product details or the item details that you're seeing is more to do with what kind of data would you like to associate with each of the products that you have on your website. Okay, but if you're looking at the parameters that you're defining under add transaction, that is again depending on how your website is set up. So for a simple example, if I can take makemytrip.com, makemytrip.com will ideally not have something called as an order ID. It probably might want to track the PNR ID, the PNR number, right? So instead of order ID, I can define PNR number, right? So it all depends on what the requirement of your website is and set it up accordingly, okay? All these three functions very much required within the e-commerce transaction code, tracking code. Okay, and if you notice, this bit is sandwiched between the basic analytics tracking code. So you have the first, obviously, when you look at the analytics snippet, you know that there is a function that also says underscore track page view, which is the main function that tracks the page views and the visits. So this bit of the code goes between the analytics tracking code. Now, we also looked at the modifications that we do when we have subdomain tracking and multiple domain tracking, right? So subdomain tracking, the function, the extra function or the extra line that you must have noticed in the code was set domain name. You're setting the domain name to be your primary domain, right? When you're doing a multiple domain tracking also, you are setting your primary domain as abc.com or whatever it is. And then you're saying set allow linker to be true because you're telling the system, please make sure you link the visit when people go from my website to the third-party shopping cart, right? That is the multiple domain tracking. When you have multiple domain tracking and you want to set up e-commerce on your website, you need to make sure that that modification is done for the e-commerce bit also. So if you don't do those modifications when you're doing multiple domain tracking, this may not work. Okay? Now, technically, I'm sure you all know how data gets pulled into certain variables when you define them on your website. So how does the page look like prior to running? It basically looks like this. Okay, and then it takes the values from the server, it takes it from the database, and takes the variables that you ideally have defined within your website, for your website. Okay, takes in from the server, and once the transaction happens and the tracking code gets executed, it basically takes all the values. So if you actually perform a transaction on your website, if you do a test transaction on your website, and you go to the final thank you page and you look for the source code, this is how the source code would look like. It'll basically capture all the details. Make sense? Okay, so once the transaction details are captured here, they obviously will show up in your account. Okay? Obviously corresponding to the number of visits and location and all the other different dimensions and metrics. What kind of reports, what kind of data does e-commerce reports give you? E-commerce conversion rate, the number of transactions like I said, revenue, definitely very important, average value of each of the transactions. When it says average value, it obviously talks of each of the transactions for the specific time period that you're looking the report for. Unique purchases and the quantity. Quantity being how many products were sold. Yes, this can be attributed. So I'll just take you through that. Okay, not much data here, but let me just show you the report. So that's your e-commerce report, and if I actually go to overview, okay, So not much data, but if you notice, the overview report will give you, like I said, the conversion rate, the number of conversions, revenue, average value, unique purchases, and the quantity. If you would like to see specifications, then you will definitely go into transactions, because transactions will give you the transaction ID numbers. Sorry about this, but it's a little slow. Yeah, so if you notice this, that's the transaction ID. And if you look at the related data that it gives you revenue, tax, shipping, and quantity separately as well. And you can segment these reports. You can segment these reports and see the source and medium of that. Yeah, so within that transaction, there were 2 products sold. Yeah? There you go. So you know what source and medium you got that transaction from. Okay? Where else do you think I will see this data? Because it says Google CPC. So where do you think I'll see this data? Where else will I see it? You definitely will see in the traffic sources, and then if you go to the paid section in the traffic sources, and yes, like you mentioned, you will definitely see this data in your AdWords campaigns report also that we looked at. Just like how we saw goal set 1, goal set 2, you also had the e-commerce tab next to it. So if you click on the e-commerce tab next to it in the AdWords campaign report, you will see the transaction recorded. You might not see the transaction ID there, but it will say one transaction recorded against which campaign. Yeah? So So you will notice the e-commerce conversion rate. Okay? So if you notice, it is showing up only for the second campaign, which means the transaction that happened was attributed to an ad from the second campaign. Yeah? And like I said, you can segment this report and see the keywords. Yes? That actually got you that conversion. So that's pretty much it about e-commerce and what kind of data it gives you. Is there any specific question that you have with regards to these reports, with regards to e-commerce or any other reports? Okay, you tell me, I have an if somebody has an e-commerce website, so technically, until and unless you select a product, first you obviously will put you go to the shopping cart, you put the products in the cart, and then you check out, and you go to the place where you put in your credit card details, and then you say submit, and that's when you're taken to the thank you page that says thank you for your purchase. Now, if I refresh that thank you for your purchase page, do you think it'll still again refresh the same page for me and tell me thank you for your purchase? No, technically, is that possible? So, if you actually do that, if you tend to refresh that page, and if it is showing you again the thank you message, technically that page is getting executed again. The conversion page will show, but will it track a transaction? No, it will not track a transaction because your transaction is already completed. A transaction will definitely involve all those steps of adding the products to your carts and then putting in your cart details and going to the completion of the transaction. I'm sorry, what is the metric that is showing you as 0.7 or 7%? Okay. Quantity, okay, the quantity as in the number of products being sold is showing multiple. But transaction still remains at 1. Right. Correct. Okay. Yeah, because it's just, if it's just one transaction and one product sold in that one transaction, ideally it should just show you 1. And it should not show you 7. And this is for what date range are you looking at? Any date range that you look at. That shouldn't be the case.
Just to add a little bit more clarity, so like she said, in most websites you do not allow, the page to display thank you for successfully completing it. But in some instances we do have, probably that could be one of your case, where if it is being refreshed, then yes, duplication of transactions might occur. Or there could be a setup that could be made using, rewriting the cookie or preventing them from rewriting the cookie as such. We can take it just offline on this one. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I kind of got your question. You basically are saying that the products that it is showing up is more, whereas the count of transactions still remains. I think we might want to look into your account and we'll take that offline because that shouldn't ideally be the case. So analytics tracks transactions or goals, be it whatever, for the day of the transaction. Not for the click, not for the day of the click, but the day of the conversion.
That's a good question actually, because we spoke about importing of goals and transactions into AdWords.
That's right.
So then what happens is, like Mercy mentioned, what's going to happen is it's going to track it to the day of the conversion tracking. So when did the conversion occur? So sometimes it behaves like how conversion tracking works. The whole behavior as such transfers. So you might see a discrepancy when you compare your goals data in your AdWords account, the one that is imported.
What will it be in AdWords?
So because AdWords only takes into consideration the 30-day period, and also it attributes to the day of the click. It's going to take the day of the click in AdWords, but not in analytics. That's a little bit
right,
of
so-
discrepancy in that.
Right. So within AdWords, it will consider, obviously, because the conversion is being imported into AdWords. So it will basically take the behavior of AdWords conversion tracking. So it would consider the click, the day of the click.
So you mean to say that e-commerce tracking code which I put in an item page
Right.
is actually working in a dual way as the AdWords conversion also and as the analytics conversion?
I wouldn't,
Because if it's taking an AdWords conversion as the day of click,
Right.
analytics is the day of conversion.
correct.
So for both the digital software per se,
Right.
it's working as
It is, so it is, I wouldn't put it that way. I would put it in a way where I would say it is basically tracking the conversion for me. But the whole concept of importing goals and conversions into your AdWords thing will definitely take the pattern of the way AdWords tracks data. So,
So does that also mean that AdWords, not analytics, but AdWords is bit, unlike a normal conversion tracking in AdWords where you can do one conversion tracking, let's say it's a sign up form or something, with analytics, goals and e-commerce tracking, you can actually have multiple conversion tracking and see what is happening with each click or each campaign. Is that a correct way of saying?
okay, let me get that right. So you said multiple conversion tracking. So you mean to say, when you say multiple conversion tracking, you're referring to goals and e-commerce?
For example, I'll just give you a small case study. Somebody's clicking on my ad,
Right,
he's filling up a form and signing up.
correct.
In my AdWords, that's my normal cost per lead or whatever you
Right, right.
Now, if I have to also track whether he is seeing a particular product and then after that is he buying anything.
Correct.
So there will be two separate conversion tools. Now, obviously, that cannot be tracked through normal AdWords tracking because AdWords tracking is only one pixel which comes out.
Right.
Can I then use analytics and then import all of them and
Yes, you can.
then create that kind of
Yes, you can analyze that data. You can use e-commerce tracking to actually track that whole concept of purchasing the product after signing up and then going and purchasing the product. And then obviously importing that conversion into your AdWords conversion report and be able to compare. Yes. Because you are able to see at a campaign level how many per click have you, conversions have you got.
But just ensure, like we discussed earlier, that they're not duplicated. Yes. Because
Yeah.
most cases we've seen instances where you've already had conversion tracking enabled, and then later, because this option was available, most of them imported the data, and it kind of askews the data.
That's right. So yes, do expect a certain amount of discrepancy when you're comparing the data in analytics to the data that is getting imported into AdWords. Okay, because first thing, AdWords conversions only get imported from analytics to AdWords reports. That's the first thing. Second thing, like we spoke about the 6-month cookie period and the 30-day cookie period. So you will see that discrepancy. Question? Sorry, you had a question? Okay. Any other questions? Thinking. Okay. Okay, so while we are thinking, we just want to do a quick exercise. It's not to rate or anything, just to see how much you have captured from today's session. So, one paper. Yeah, it's the same thing. You should have something else on. Yeah, just one. Each of you just take one. If you have extra sheets, you can just give it to me. Okay, and just take 5 minutes to answer those multiple answer questions.
I don't really think they need 5 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. They're pretty basic. So. Are we discussing the questions? Don't discuss them. We done? Yes? Okay, I heard a very few yes. Yes, okay. How many analytics accounts can you link to an AdWords account? How many say one? Okay. And how many say, what was the other option? 5. Did somebody say 5? Okay. Anybody says 10? Okay, any other answers? Okay, give yourself a point. It's no limit. Yes, earlier you were allowed to link only one AdWords account to an analytics account, but now you can link multiple AdWords accounts to your analytics accounts. There is no limit. What is required to create an analytics account? How many of you all got that right? Don't cheat. Okay. How many profiles by default can be created in an account? Okay. Does that include duplicate profiles? Okay. Latest version of analytics tracking code? Asynchronous? Okay. Urchin code is deprecated and is no more supporting the analytics tracking. How many goals can be created in a profile? Okay, and how many sets would that be? Perfect. Basic criteria to link accounts? Just make sure that the email ID is an admin on both the AdWords and Analytics account. What reports would I look to check if my goals work fine? Is it A or B? Okay. Criteria for AdWords data to show up. Yeah, that was actually a typo there, but yeah, it's A. Will create, okay, it's not there in the paper, but I want to ask this question. Will creating funnels affect the number of goals that get tracked in my account? No. Yes, that's right. One last question. We did discuss manual tagging. What are the parameters that go into manual tagging? Source, medium, campaign, keyword, and URL, right? Okay, no, URL is what you're tagging. So it's source, medium, campaign, and keyword. What are the compulsory parameters that you should use to tag your URLs? Source, medium, and campaign, right? You got it right. So give yourself points for all those questions.
One small question. Can you have both auto tagging and manual tagging together? Why? let's say I just wanted to track it and I just tag them and I'm very lazy to remove the tags. Let's assume. It's not going to work at all because to the manual tags, the system is going to try and add the GCL ID parameter. So it's not going to work. Yeah.
Guys, one quick thing there, for people who use AdWords accounts, some of them, or if you have come across people who set up AdWords accounts, some of them tend to set up keyword level URLs. Okay, so basically for every keyword, they tend to set up a URL. Now that URL trumps the destination URL that you have set up for the ad in your account. So when you see such cases, just make sure there is no redirect on the keyword URL. Because if there's a redirect on the keyword URL, then auto tagging might not work. Okay, so that's a quick check that you can do, just in case you notice the data is not getting tracked when you have keyword URLs set up. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much it for today's session. We had a good time taking you through the training, answering your questions, and I hope you had a good time throughout the session, learning and asking questions and getting your answers. Yes, we do understand that you would like to have an advanced level of training as well to be able to understand how to read the reports.